Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile, your favorite podcast for all things gardening and homesteading. And with me, as always, is my co-host David Poole, owner of Mid County Farm and Feed, and the guy that just likes to learn things. I'm not going to call you a full-on expert, but you teach me a thing or two every now and then. And what we're going to get into today is a very often overlooked aspect of the garden. It's something that every plant needs: pollinators, right?
Yeah. You know, how many people out there actually have a pollinator section? Or we've talked about like biodiversity,
Right, yeah.
having different flowers and things inside like a garden area, but do you actually have like a dedicated pollinator garden, which you don't necessarily have to, or do you have dedicated pollinator sections? And I think what we're going to talk about today is like some of the factors that you can look at and things to consider if you're wanting to add some pollinator plants into your landscape, into your yard, your garden, whatever it be, and how to maybe design that where it actually benefits pollinators, and if you are growing food, benefits you.
So when you say, the way you say pollinator garden, in my head, it makes me think like I might have 8 raised beds, and I take one raised bed and just fill it with flowers.
Yeah, I actually did that this year.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I actually made 90% of the mistakes that we're going to talk about.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't make the mistakes because I didn't know any better. I made the mistakes because I was in a hurry.
I see.
And
I see.
I did what most people do, and I just went and I bought from my own store the things that looked cool.
Oh, yeah.
That like caught my eye.
Hey, but everything you sell at your store is functional, right? It's not just cool.
I mean, and everything that I have has a benefit. Like I looked up and like researched and figured out that all the things that I put in did have some benefit to some form of a pollinator or another.
Yeah.
But I just didn't design it right. I didn't design it intentionally. And I think that's kind of what I want to get into today is some of the basics of putting a pollinator.
Well, guide me through it, because I've never like intentionally made a pollinator garden. You know.
First mistake that I feel that most people make in creating a pollinator garden is, and this is exactly what I did. You know, I bought like one Mystic Blue Spire salvia.
Okay.
I bought a.
You did that to get high, right?
Yeah.
No, don't
Not
do
that
that.
kind of salvia.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah.
I got like a ruby red one and then a different color. So I did have like 3 different salvias.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of did what I was supposed to, but then I only planted like one of this, one of that, one of this. And when you're wanting to create a pollinator garden, you need to create clusters.
Okay.
So ideally, depending on the size of the space, we want to have like maybe 3 to 7.
So I don't like want just random flowers all on their own, spread far apart.
Right. I want to have
Well,
like
I screwed up this year then.
groupings.
Okay.
So when you think about like doing it in a grouping, what's the first thing? Like if you were a butterfly or a bee and you just saw one flower or a grouping, what in your mind is the benefit of the grouping?
Choice, I guess. Maybe more pollen to gather, right?
So
Abundance.
if you went to a grocery store that only had one aisle of things to choose from, and then you turned and you went to one that had 20 aisles,
Yeah.
you're going to go to the place that has a selection or an abundance, really. That's what I'm getting at. Like not a selection of different things, but pollinators, as we know, a lot of pollinators have host plants. They are attracted to specific colors
Right.
and shapes. And we'll get into that a little bit, but we need a stand of one particular species because that species is going to provide some of the other factors that we'll talk about a little bit down the road.
Okay. Yeah.
So you need an abundance because ideally, like most people, they want to attract pollinators, but if I only have one plant, that plant is not in infinite producer of nectar and pollen.
No, I mean, and they also make flowers at different times of the year, and some make flowers only once, some flower twice.
And if we only have one plant and there's not enough for multiple pollinators, like what's the point of attracting one or two bees? Not that we want a whole hive, but we want steady traffic. And when we look at weather patterns, like dry weather, really rainy weather, cool temperatures, warm temperatures, that all affect pollen and nectar formation.
Yeah.
And so we've got to have things are in motion. We want an abundance. You know, we look at like just a common honeybee. They use tallow and they use goldenrod.
And alfalfa.
Why do they use those? Because they have the resources, like the pollen and nectar actually have the nutrition that they need to sustain, but they're in abundance.
In a massive abundance, right?
Yeah. You know, we can't create that, like a mass abundance like that.
Right.
But we've got to have clusters of things.
That makes sense.
And
okay, that checks out, yeah.
And one of the things that
meaning you don't want to just put like one little marigold here, right, and then just one little blue mealy sage. You kind of maybe pile it up
into a cluster nut. Now, I could take that same approach. You know, if I had one marigold over here and one over here, I can take that same approach. I can have like a grouping over here, and I can have a small grouping over here. So it doesn't have to be a massive grouping, but I can put small clusters or large clusters of things, and I can repeat those throughout the landscape or throughout an area to really diversify and kind of spread it out so that all isn't in one place.
Yeah.
So that you're drawing pollinators across a landscape, because yes, they're going to go for the things that they need, but they also might be encouraged to stop at your squash.
Right. Yeah.
So that's ideally what we're looking at.
That way we're not out there with a Q-tip, you know?
Exactly. So clusters is the first thing that you got to look at.
Okay.
Second thing we need to look at is bloom time. So when we're building a pollinator...
Does that mean time of the day or time of the year?
Time of the year.
Okay.
So we need to have something ideally that's going to bloom year-round. So oftentimes when people are building pollinator gardens or pollinator spaces, they're very focused on spring and summer, and they often forget fall. And fall here is still somewhat of a warm season. So
fall's a growing season here.
If we don't have fall blooming flowers, then it's going to be very hard to sustain pollinators in an area consistently. So finding things that are going to be blooming year round in sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm guilty of that, whereas I find things that are only in spring and summer. And then when I get to the fall, maybe I don't plant as much stuff.
We brought this up before as well, too. When you're shopping around, a lot of these stores only optimize for the spring.
You're right.
Because it's based on consumer trends. People get the spring bug, and you go out and you buy a lot of flowers and plants, and you get stuff that is pretty. So then the store optimizes for that.
Because that's when the traffic is there.
That's when the traffic's there. So they get these flowers that bloom in early spring so their customers can see them, right? But they might be annuals, and the blooms might die back in a month, and now you're left with nothing.
Yep.
For the rest of the year. So that is a good point.
I think too, you also when you're looking at as you're planning out that space, so you've got you have a cluster of something. We also have to look at like the growth habit. An easy way to maximize a pollinator garden, or we talk about this even in growing vegetables or just regular garden herbs and stuff. It's looking at mature size.
Sure.
Like you typically can put a plant into one of three tiers at either like low or ground cover type plants. You have medium height plants, and then you have tall. And then in the flowering world, there are things that could be like extra tall, like sunflowers
and hemlock, right?
Yeah,
stuff like
things
that.
Can get really, really tall, and those are kind of anomalies for what I'm talking about.
And also trellising plants, morning glories, stuff like that can get as tall as they want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got to design based upon that. So where is this going? Is it going in an island bed where it's out in the middle of a yard, or is it in a raised bed? So where I could put in taller growing things in the middle and then I can tier in medium and or smaller things around the outer edges, creating a very full look and something that works well together where everything has the proper spacing and the ability to grow, but I'm maximizing that space. But it's also important too, because pollinators also, they can see vision. So they're looking for colors.
Right.
Some find things by aroma. So if we put things in the wrong tiered like orientation, we could be blocking the view.
Right. Or masking the smell.
Yep. So we have to think about that. So having a proper tiering system can really help you maximize like visibility and just for your air.
And all of these little pollinators and things that spread this around, they all fly at different heights too. You know, so, bees can fly really high, butterflies can fly middle. Like they all have different sort of heights. So that makes sense. And we have to remember that all of the pollinators and bugs and even birds and bats and all of that and flowers have co-evolved. The flowers have evolved to be more, help me out here. They've evolved to look better to these plants, right? They're trying to get their pollen picked up and sent to the wind. So you have to cater towards the pollinators.
And I think that brings you to the next thing is looking at different flower types. So, you know, oftentimes we just plant whatever makes the most sense for us, but you've got to look at different flower types because not every pollinator can utilize every flower.
Yeah.
Now, some will work for many species.
Sure, yeah.
But, you know, like flat open flowers, maybe like echinacea, like the coreopsis that have, you know, they're perfect landing pads.
Yeah.
Bees, bumblebees, butterflies, but they're not going to be suited for big nectar drinkers. So
like butterflies.
Some types of butterflies, they're not gonna be able to get the nectar as easily. Definitely not going to work very well for hummingbirds.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have things that are more tubular flower that are designed for nectar drinking, and some of those same flowers, like the blue mystic spire salvia, you'll see bumblebees and bees on it as well, but it's those tube flowers are very, very prone to hummingbirds.
And this is actually pretty easy too. When you're going out and you're looking for flowers, if you're buying seeds, the information is going to be on the packet. If you're getting a transplant, it's going to be in the little insert. It will usually either have a picture of these or tell you that it attracts bees. They'll say it attracts hummingbirds. They'll say it attracts butterflies, or it might say this attracts bees and birds. It'll let you know. So it seems like what we're saying is really complicated, but it's really not. Yeah, it's kind of whimsical. You can do it super whimsical also.
So I would say, like, you know, your flat open flowers and like your tubular flowers are probably kind of commonplace, but then you have something that most people are not familiar with, or the next two, and that's going to be like a composite flower. So the best example of a composite flower in our zone and area is like your lantana.
Yeah.
So you have one stalk that is made up of many flowers.
Yeah.
So now you have lots of spots for, you know, I'm not going to say micro, but you've got smaller amounts of pollen and nectar, but now there's tons, like hundreds of flowers.
And lantana is native because
not all of them are, but you know, but there are native species.
There is. It just comes up in my yard. I've never planted it.
It's very, very resilient to the soils and the weather that we have. So it's a great option for putting in a pollinator garden. Now, some of the lantanas, you know, you got to look at growth habits because trailing lantana will get all over the place.
Oh, yeah, sure will.
You know, your more shrubby or ground cover types, which are mostly what people utilize now, they work really good for borders and overhangs, and they're simple. But, you know, that different flower type is really, really beneficial. And you also have...
because it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? Yeah.
Then you have what we call a cluster flower. Cluster flower is on a lot of your common herbs, like so parsley, fennel, dill. Have you ever seen how they flower?
Yeah, they flower like it looks like an umbrella.
Yep.
Sort of, yeah.
And so you have this big cluster of flowers, and those are important in a pollinator garden because not only do they attract certain pollinators, they also are a way to attract in checks and balances and natural predators and beneficial insects that can actually help you eradicate or knock down populations of things like aphids or whatever else might be happening in the garden. So that's one that gives you like triple benefit. You get usability from an herb standpoint, you get predator attraction, and you get pollinator attraction. So that's kind of a unique way to look at it. So when you're designing it, clusters put in at the right height where there's visibility, and then different shapes of flowers. That makes sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
And then you can also get a little more nuance to that if you want, but when you're putting it in, it's not all symmetrical, like creating a flow, like a natural kind of ebb and flow. So in a bed, you can have like a pocket, a cluster of like this one flower that grows tall. Then you might have, let's say, maybe we have lantana growing on the bottom or lower, and it's flowing. And then over here, we have another pocket that juts out, and it has another flower with a different shape and color and size that grows behind. So you're creating kind of like this natural kind of cottagey feel, but it mimics essentially like a natural growth.
You see that a lot in like municipal landscaping.
Yeah.
So I see it a lot.
Yeah, so you're intentionally putting certain plants to attract the pollinators you want, but you want it to kind of feel more natural. And is that going to like change how many pollinators you get? Not necessarily, but it does make the space more inviting from an aesthetic standpoint. And it makes it more enjoyable. And I think if you spend the time, we talked about this in our last episode about sustainability, like there has to be something in it for you.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think when you're creating flower spaces, creating it aesthetically plays a big part into maintaining it.
And I do want to point out too that I think I brought it up earlier that a lot of what people are immediately attracted to are kind of annuals, right? Because you go to the store, it's spring, and you get an annual, and then it immediately loses its blooms, and it's kind of sad. It's depressing. Now you just have this. There's a lot of plants that will just pay you dividends for pollinators that you'll never have to worry about, right? Like bushes and things that you have azaleas. That's a flower, right? You have gardenias. That's a flower. It attracts pollinators. It's a lovely smell, right? Gardenia is one of the top favorite smells, right? You smell gardenia, think of your grandma, like top tier smell. And one thing that I have in my yard that's like just goes hog wild multiple times a year is elderberry.
Yeah,
I don't do anything to it. I just prune it sometimes, right? Because it goes wild.
Yeah, it does.
It creates millions of white flowers.
Texas sage is another.
Texas sage is a great one.
If you landscape like the red yucca, it's not actually a true yucca. It's more of like they call it a hesperaloe. But that native like flowers, and it will attract hummingbirds.
Yeah.
It doesn't have
passion flowers. They attract butterflies.
Yes. So, and that was kind of my next thing is like, you can also, depending on what your goals are, your pollinator garden can be intentional to attract specific species. So the passion flower, the purple passion flower is commonly the host plant
for monarchs, right?
Well, it's the Gulf fritillary caterpillar.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a native caterpillar to our region, or a butterfly, not a caterpillar. I mean, it is a caterpillar too. But they solely feed on that as their host plant.
Okay.
When we look at monarchs, you're needing, there's a lot of species of milkweed.
That's right, yeah.
Milkweed. You got to have, ideally the right kinds. There are kinds that are a lot better than others.
Yeah.
But that is that host plant.
Right.
And having that timing and having those host plants, and then dill. I've talked about this before about like the swallowtail butterfly.
That's
caterpillars,
right.
The eastern swallowtail. Then you can have even something that is not necessarily thought of as a pollinator plant, but citrus.
Yeah.
Citrus. A host plant for a different species of swallowtail
really?
Butterfly. If you ever have a citrus tree and you find what looks like on the leaf, it just looks like bird poop.
Uh-huh.
That's actually a caterpillar, and that is a swallowtail, and it's disguising itself in that tree.
Disguises itself as poop.
Yeah, and so it's this camouflage to try to complete its life cycle, and it eats on the leaves of citrus.
Yeah.
So you can utilize these concepts like I'm talking about. So let's say maybe you want to plant citrus, but you can utilize that citrus as your overstory plant. Then you can come in and you can plant other pollinator-friendly things tiered around it.
Yeah, like lantana around it, like you brought up. Yeah.
You could plant herbs, all kinds of different things, so that you create an overstory, which later on will provide shade and then reduce watering, help keep plants and pollinators cool. But at the same time, everything is attracting something. So you can be really intentional about it. It doesn't have to be necessarily like an annual or perennial like shrub or plant, or it doesn't have to be a vine. You know, not everybody's set up to have like vines like Peggy Martins and jasmines and passion flower. Like they can get massive.
They can get out of hand.
And that goes to like that sustainability.
They get out of hand quick.
If you're not prepared, it can get out of control. So you can utilize trees. There's lots of good trees out there. Controversial one in Texas, you know, I'll probably get some pushback from this, but you know, like Vitex, like you either love them or you hate them as a plant, but Vitex they work really well in this Southeast Texas climate, and they bloom like crazy.
They do, yeah.
A wide array of pollinators.
So that's a really, really popular tree shrub, or whatever you want to call it, for landscaping. I've noticed.
Essentially, it's a small to medium-sized tree. It gives you that tree form look if you prune it right.
That also brings me up too. You need to do a little bit of your homework on some of these things, because another really popular landscaping shrub around here is oleander. It makes a beautiful flower, right? But it's incredibly poisonous. So, you know, you do need to make a little bit of that too. Do you have dogs in your backyard? Maybe you don't want oleander, right? You got a dog that likes to eat grass like mine. Stay away from the oleander. It makes beautiful flowers, great for pollinators. It's also really hardy.
It is.
When it comes down to people use it all the time here commercially, because it can handle drought really well.
I've got one growing at the base of a tree.
Yeah.
And it dies back every year and comes back.
Comes right back.
Never watered it. I've never touched it. So while it's resilient, it's not, you know, if I had a dog or...
it's very poisonous. So
you want to know about it.
Yeah.
The last thing that really comes to mind about like pollinators, if we're designing a space for them, is trying to feature in native plants.
Right.
I'm not saying you only have to use native plants. I'm not one of those people.
First of all, I do want to bring this up. If we only used native plants, we would have not a lot of stuff, right? All of our food came from somewhere else, right? So I agree with you. I'm glad you said that, right? Because you want to prioritize native things.
Absolutely.
But you don't only have to have native things.
And prioritizing native things will help you because and people want you to do that because it's about water management. It's about resource management. It's also about supporting native pollinators.
Yeah.
You know, not all the pollinators we have are, you know, native to this region.
No.
So, but there's things out there like solitary bees that are maybe this one species is native to the Gulf Coast region, and they are very efficient pollinators, but they may like certain native plants. And, you know, not to say they won't get on other things, but you're supporting the native habitat, which was already here, and you're trying to sustain it. So, you know, the lantanas, the yuccas, we talked about.
Your Texas sage.
Turk's cap is a great one that flowers and is very easy.
Mountain laurel, that's a good one. Yeah.
So, you know, we don't get too crazy into specifics of what plants because everybody likes something different. But at the end of the day, I think
basil's the goat. Basil's the goat.
Put all the herbs, because the herbs are excellent. You know, they feel so much more.
They do. And just let them go. That's the thing with herbs when it comes to pollination is I know that herbs are meant to be used, and you do want to do that.
I do,
but let it go. Let it bolt and see what happens. You're gonna get so many pollinators.
Herbs are something too that bring me to backtrack. When I talked about clusters,
Yeah,
there are some of these plants that maybe you only need one of.
like your dill,
Like
right? You don't need one of that.
My dill plant takes up half of a 4-foot diameter circle bed.
Yeah,
So it is a cluster in itself.
in itself.
I might only need one parsley plant. I can have two, but I could space it out. I don't need to plant a cluster because when I look at the size, another herb that I really love that is really good for hummingbirds is pineapple sage.
Yeah.
It'll grow like a small kind of like leggy shrub, and I only need one in a spot. If I planted 2 or 3 or a bunch, it's going to be too much for my space. Now, if you have a lot of space, absolutely could you cluster these things, but if you are working in a small residential area like most people are, you don't want your whole backyard to be plants, but you can utilize certain items to have less species and still get a good stand of a plant by only having one. So not everything needs clusters.
And I think the important thing to remember with planting for attracting pollinators and planting pollinator gardens is that it's really forgiving, right? It's not as hard when you don't quote unquote succeed in it, right? Because you're not trying to get fruit, you're not trying to bear this. It's fun,
right?
And it's lighthearted, and you can kind of go wild with it. And at the end of it, if you're really successful and you have these flowers, you can pick a pretty bouquet.
Absolutely.
You can have nice. My brain just went blank. You can have nice herbs. That's what I was trying to say. You can have nice herbs for the kitchen because we all know that basil is the pollinator goat.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of, put flowers in your space.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a flower lover. You don't have to like them.
Yeah.
But whether you're growing a landscape, it makes things more interesting. If you're growing food or fruits, pollinators are vital. So,
and that's a great place to end this because it means we've come full circle. We started this entire conversation by saying that it is often one of the most overlooked things, and it is. So just get some color in your garden and start trying to do things a little intentionally, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I've learned a lot. I'm glad. Hey, we're back. And we'll see you again here next time.